Hello, people! Welcome to Dingville USA, the capital of guitar finish repairs. I'm Scotty D, and this is an LTD SC-607, made in Korea, with a thick poly finish and plenty of dings. Let's get you some. Okay, those aren't even the worst ones. There are a couple more even worse ones. I just noticed this though. Does that say SRC? I guess. But this is the model SC-607. Now, there's a juicy one. Now the case, the guitar case that this came in with, says on it, Lacuna Coil SR number 3. I mean SR number 3. And I'm thinking Lacuna Coil's a heavy metal band, and maybe the guy's initials in the band was SR. No, that's not the guy's initials. The guy his name's Marco. But it would make sense that this was on the road, because look how dinged up it is. It is very dinged. Maybe we'll start down here. Start by dropping in some naphtha. This will give me a good idea of what the end result is going to look like when we're finished. Sometimes I'll take a little bit of the fill and finish ultra thin from Glu+Boost and go around the edges just to seal things up. And a lot of times I'll take the Glu+Boost accelerator, which is the glue dry, and spray it on a paper towel over by my exhaust fan up above the bench, and then move the paper towel over to the area. Once again with the naphtha is kind of my crystal ball. It tells me, it lets me look into the future almost. But this one's going to need a bit of work. I know you Deftones fans are probably a minute ago were going, no, that's not what it is, because I had to look it up. Steph, what's his name from the Deftones? This is his signature guitar. Carpenter. Steph Carpenter guitar. That's why it says SRC on the fingerboard. Deftones. Anyways, the problem I'm going to have with this little area is that it was going to look way too dark. So what I did is I dropped in something that's going to make it look lighter. And you can already see it in there. I'm going to end up kind of shaving it down into more of a thin little sliver before I put the finish over top of it. And what that is just a oak colored furniture wax. And then the reason I was putting the gel super glue over top of it is that when you have a jagged, rough wood surface, sometimes when you put that water thin CA glue into it, it keeps it looking too dark. So the gel has a property where it allows it to remain looking lighter. Once again, the paper towel that's been sprayed with the glue dry accelerator, and then the Glu+Boost ultra thin fill and finish into the ding areas. I'll end up going over top of this, over the entire area here with the sandpaper. This is 400 grit sandpaper. It's the free cut sandpaper. I get it from StewMac. It comes in a little roll. It has a PSA backing on it, so I can stick it to whatever foam block. After the 400, I switch over to the 600 grit Oscillix, and then I clean off the area with a toothbrush. I also hit it with 2000 grit Oscillix, which they actually call Bufflix, because it's closer to, you're just buffing at that point, and you get up that high in the grits. And then the Plastex from Meguiar's, which is an automotive product on Viva paper towels. That's the blue colored one is the Oscillix. And I also had a 2000 grit. It's a different color. Oh yeah, I forgot. I go to the Trizact 3000 before the Plastex. Trizact is also an automotive product. You can buy that at any of the auto parts stores, even Walmart automotive section. I heard they make it in a 4000 too, but I've never had the need to go that high. Depending on the area, I might start filing it away, sanding, or sometimes scraping. Just kind of throwing stuff at the wall and seeing what sticks. There's so many different dinged areas on this guitar. There's a little naphtha on a toothbrush. Okay, that's 300 grit sandpaper right there. And that's fill and finish thin on a lip brush. The lip brush has been in the little cup of CA glue for a little too long. It's starting to lose its shape. Once again, we got the glue dry accelerator on the paper towel. And the scraping of the poly is really just to get rid of the cracked, the fractured parts of the poly. A lot of times when poly takes a hit, the dent has a fracture around it, or a little crater, and it's kind of lifted up, and it doesn't look too good. So sometimes it's best to just kind of like try to pick away, scrape, and remove some of that stuff. And then we just replace it all with the CA glue. The Glu+Boost was formulated to work perfectly with poly finishes. It comes in 3 different viscosities. And then they also have the Ultra Gel and the Master Glues, which are more for structural. But I do use the gel as a first coat, like I explained a minute ago, when the wood is getting a little too frayed, and the thin stuff has the tendency to make it look too dark. That's when I'll whip out the gel. So level sanding and buffing. Once again, I wet sand with the Trizact because the Trizact comes on a little foam pad. I use a little bit of Simple Green all-purpose cleaner. Instead of mixing soapy water, you'll hear a lot of people say they wet sand with Dawn dish soap. I don't do that because I just have this Simple Green in a little bottle, and it's basically soapy water. I just use a drop at a time. It doesn't, I've seen Dawn dish soap. It sits in a dirty cup of water for too long, and it just it gets nasty. So that's a look at the Bufflex and Trizact. There was a couple big dings right there on the top of the guitar. I did use some 220 grit sandpaper to level sand it. I had it on that foam block, and I used some binding tape on either side of the sandpaper. The sandpaper was going down a little strip down the middle of the foam, and on either side of the sandpaper I had outriggers of binding tape. That way it kept everything nice and level. And then this shot is just to show you how I'm holding the guitar in the Total Vise number 7. Gets it in a comfortable area where I can see what I'm doing. Got the overhead lights. I also have a skylight up above. And we're starting to get in the ballpark of looking good. Again, I'd say. And we'll come back tomorrow and start working on that neck ding. I'm going to revisit that area there too. That needs a little more level sanding. So the neck ding, it was so deep. Part of the dark binding color kind of migrated down into the maple crack. You can probably see it on your big screen TVs. It's a little harder for me to see as I'm. But yeah, I can see. Yeah, there's a crack there that looks a little dark, and nice little slip with the X-Acto blade, but that's okay. We're going to be sanding this area still. So I'm going to have to chip away a little bit of the poly and open up this crack a little bit. Because once again, if I'm not careful here, I can make a dark crack look even darker. And what I really want to do is make it look lighter. So what I'm doing is I'm going to mix up 2 different colors of the furniture wax, and I'm going to jam it in there, because as you can see with the naphtha here, it's going to look dark if I don't do anything. This is Fill and Finish Ultra Thin right there. Actually, that was the Master Glue Ultra Thin. Now I'm taking my basically clear wax to see what it might look like. It almost looks like soap, like I'm putting soap down in there. But I'm going to dig that out and mix a little bit of that oak with the clear and get me a maple color. And there it is right there. This is the first time I'm ever showing something like this on my channel. I use that furniture wax here and there on little spots. It's usually right at the tail end of a repair. I don't usually capture it on video, but this time you get a little bonus video here. Now, this is the Glu+Boost Fill and Finish Black. Pre-mixed. It comes right black in the bottle. And once I build this up, I'll level sand and then I'll go over the entire surface with clear finish, a new layer of clear, the Glu+Boost Ultra Thin. This is still the black. After it cures, I'll go at it with a file. This is just a little needle file. Easy does it. Maybe not so easy. I'm starting to see that the binding has a bulge in it. When it took that hit, it kind of rippled it. And lastly, a clear finish coat of Glu+Boost Fill and Finish Ultra Thin on a lip brush, followed by a little bit of the Glue Dry Accelerator. I'll do that about 4 or 5 times. I'll hit it with the 600 grit, 1500, 2000 Bufflex, and then 3000 Trizact. Here we can see how it bulged out a little bit. It pulled away from the rosewood. So I'm going to start filling in this little void. A little bit of fill and finish first. I didn't even know there was a void there till I started adding that in. I think a little wood dust to fill the void. That's mahogany. Sometimes I'll use mahogany instead of rosewood because rosewood, once you add the CA, it looks like ebony almost. So the mahogany looks closer to rosewood when we're finished. I always use a lighter color. All right, now we're going to go over the whole thing with some of the Meguiar's Ultra Cut Compound. That's the Mirror Glaze 105. And then we'll go over it with the Plastex on a Viva paper towel. First I'll buff off the Ultra Cut. There's an area along the edge I'm going to keep working on. And I think I'm starting to see some areas where I'll probably need to go over it again with the Bufflex sandpaper. Little sanding scratches still present. But I'll take care of that before I invite the customer back over to pick it up. That's the 105 right there. It only takes the smallest amount. Teeny tiny little bit. Thanks so much for watching, guys. I'll do a brief little synopsis here of all the different materials that I used in this repair. We used the 200 grit on the foam block with the outriggers on either side. That's so I didn't sand a crater down into the top and the back on those big surfaces. I've got 400 grit and free cut sandpaper, 600 grit Oscillex. That's the 2000 grit Bufflex, 3000 Trizact, and I wet sand with Simple Green. Then we move on to the Meguiar's 105 Ultra Cut and the Plastex on Viva paper towels. And there's a finished product right there, the fretboard edge looking pretty slick. It still has some battle scars, but it's not, too horrifying to look at anymore. Good enough for heavy metal music, I think, I'll say. I gotta buff that out a little bit more. I left some residue on the back side. The front side's looking pretty good. A little bit more work to do on the edges, but other than that, I think we'll call it a video. It's been a pleasure, guys. Thanks again for tuning in. Thanks to all my new subscribers. We're up almost to 12,000 subscribers now. So thank you so much. And hopefully, I'll see you next week.